I think if you guys are ready, we can maybe go ahead and get started. Everyone, if you want to do a quick intro.
Perfect. Yeah, we can get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Arun Penmetsa, one of the partners at Storm Ventures, and welcome to this webinar on B2B SaaS expansion strategies. Now, as you all know, it's really important for any business to get their sales, customer success, and product teams working together to drive expansion. But how do you actually do this in reality? And to talk about that, we have two amazing leaders joining us today. Christina Noren, who's currently an EIR at Storm, has been the first or early product leader at many companies, including 4 that eventually went public. And Michael Wilde has been the top AE or SE at many companies, including Honeycomb, where Storm is an investor. So thank you both for doing this today. And with that, I'll hand it over to Christina and Michael.
Great. Thanks, Arun. Thanks for the intro. And Sam, thanks for facilitating here. So we'll just so just on the format here, I'm going to spend some time mostly leading just through a few orientation slides that we put together in presentation, but this is mostly going to be a discussion and Q&A session. So we'll try to get those slides out of the way so we have just sort of a framework of thinking. I will say up front that there is density to the slides. We'll be providing the slides after. I'm not going to read you everything that's on the slides, but it should provide some framework for discussion. And then, we'll have a little discussion between Michael and I, and I'll tell you that let's go to the next slide with the intro. And then after the discussion, we'll start taking some of the Q&A that's already rolling in. So as Arun said, this is us. I will say that Michael and I have been working together on and off for many years. I called him up to invite him to join Splunk back in the beginning of 2006. And we've been sparring ever since. And I had the good fortune of being on the board at Honeycomb while he was taking off as the leading AE there. So
yeah, it's been a really fun ride. And I owe you a lot, Christina, and I look forward to arguing with you on camera.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I mean, this session, Tahi, who's another partner here at Storm, asked us to do this session, and Michael and I were sitting in his kitchen near Tahoe back in October, having exactly this kind of discussion. Yeah. So we're just going to continue the discussion, right? So anyway,
why not?
Unfortunately, you're not cooking a nice meal during this one.
I think. Maybe I owe you one.
So, yeah, I think so. Okay. Next slide. So we'll get started with just sort of a framework for discussion here. Let's go to the next slide. So we were talking a little bit up front in this, and I think there's a lot of different models of expansion, and we see that with portfolio companies here with their own experiences, and it tends to be kind of black and white. It's like either sales-led or product-led, and there's a lot of just like, I've had a lot of CEOs I've reported to who shall go nameless and blameless, that are just like, well, introduce more products for expansion. That's not always the answer. So I think there's two dimensions to think about, which is there's sort of a continuum between upsell and cross-sell in the form of what it is you're expanding with. And, more volume of the same product is the easiest thing, especially if you pick a metric where there's sort of organic growth. That often doesn't get you where you need to be. When you start talking about an add-on or a higher plan, you're still selling to the same champion. You're still selling the same use case, but you're saying, okay, there's more value if you have this higher plan with these extra widgets. Then, a new use with the same team is probably the next level of difficulty. It's actually in some ways maybe easier than the former because you're not getting somebody to nickel and dime to pay more. Going to a new team with the same product and the same organization, it's very powerful. I mean, that's what we did at Splunk. It's like, we would have, organizations like Fidelity that were using us in all kinds of pockets, and people were talking to each other, and eventually lots of $50,000 pockets became a $10 million hole. New product to the same team is probably the hardest, and notice that there's no new product to new team. That's not expansion, that's another business. But new product to the same team, these CEOs who shall remain nameless and blameless really underestimate what it means to introduce an entirely new product. And that, that you're not going to do that as a 50-person company because you don't have enough engineering resource to truly maintain multiple products. And then going over to the go-to-market, this is kind of like right now, you represent more the sales-led growth. I represent more the product-led growth, but we've worked together in both, in both contexts. And there's a continuum there as well. It's, there's pure PLG where there's no touch and people just buy on their own. That's hard to do right. And then there's, pure sales-led growth where you're paying a shiny shoe salesperson like Michael to do all the work. And then there's something in between. You want to say something?
I was going to say my boots.
They're actually not so
My boots are a little dirty.
Yeah, they're not so shiny.
Yeah, I mean, some of this also depends on like the market you're in and the stage the company is in.
Yeah.
And the fit of your product to the organization. Like if you have a company that has a single buying center, like I work at Honeycomb and we make the best observability solution for production engineering teams. Sometimes there is one production environment, right? Salesforce is one of my customers, and there are multiple environments because they have different, let's say, not subsidiaries, different business units that operate independently. So there are some situations where, you can go after not the whole thing, but you're starting in one whole master business unit versus different buying centers. And sometimes it allows you to be more flexible, sometimes it's harder. And in the situation where you want to introduce a new product that you probably shouldn't when you're a 50-person company, sometimes there are opportunities to discover that in large companies.
Absolutely. And then we try to capture sort of in the body of this is just, the yellow to red. All of this is hard. The yellow is the easiest, but like, what are some of the things that you have to think about? Like if you're doing that blended kind of model where, where you have customer success people that do have some high touch with customers, but it's not all field salespeople and the product is helping as well. You've got a lot of systems and people issues to think about. If you're going pure product led, whichever form you take, it's a lot of design and effort. And I see a lot of companies try to graft product led onto products that weren't designed that way. And there's all kinds of pitfalls, which we'll talk about. The sales is just a high cost of sales. And, over to the right, again, the ongoing R&D. So, and I think both the second column and the last column, there's a real danger of customers feeling like they're being nickel and dimed. And I see this also happening when people add products through acquisitions.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have a customer relationship, and then your salespeople are going out and saying, okay, well, there's this extra module, this extra module, this extra module. And I'm like, when does it end? Like, I expect you as a software company to be enhancing your product all the time for the same price I'm already paying. That's what we did at Splunk for the first 7 years.
Yeah, I think all that's really interesting. In the world of SaaS, however, back at Splunk, we were an on-prem software company. So the marginal cost of producing the next unit is almost nothing. And we, until the company at Splunk developed Splunk Cloud, there's no cost to run the thing. Whereas, companies like mine and a lot of other businesses are using cloud raw materials.
Yeah.
And that has a floor on the cost and
Yeah.
the profitability. And
Yeah.
sometimes you end up in a situation where you just, can't.
I mean, if there's a real hard cost, it's one thing. If it's just, to do an additional bell and whistle on the same underlying usage metric,
Right.
it pisses people off. Anyway, next slide. So the other thing is that the customer journeys we often talk about have at the last step of land and expand, it's just like one step is expand, which is not the case. The expansion transaction is itself a customer journey that involves all the steps that we're used to in the land, and you have to design that expansion. And I see that as being one of the reasons a lot of companies have trouble with expand is they're not thinking about the whole process. So you have an existing customer, they have to go through discovery, they have to go through evaluation. One of the things I've seen fall down is you've got a SaaS product where there's an expansion motion of either more volume or new modules or a higher plan. And there's no way to trial that and roll it back on your existing account. It's just a pretty basic problem that doesn't get designed. And, and then there's a purchase process, there's an implementation process, and there's value. And one of the things I didn't mention on the previous slide, but I think I'll emphasize here is, which is kind of to Arun's intro here, is wherever you are on that two-dimensional matrix of form and go-to-market models on expansion, there is a need for product and customer success and sales. Product-led growth doesn't mean product does it and customer success and sales has nothing to do. Sales-led growth doesn't mean sales does it and the product doesn't have to support it. And so, so you have to think about this whole journey. And I'll just highlight some things where, for product, pricing strategy is, is the most crucial thing that product is responsible for. And obviously, sales and success and, and direct customer contact, these are all inputs, but product is ultimately responsible for pricing the product in a way that supports expansion. I've talked about the safe trial and rollback, the self-service purchase for expansions. And, does that work with the way that, customers purchase? And what I will also say from our shared Splunk experience, we designed the product-led motions first, and then we layered sales on top of it. And we had sales and customer success and support people using the same interface as customers use self-service, which is always healthier, rather than have separate knobs and systems. And that makes the job of sales and success, I think, easier. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. And also one of the cool things that we did back at Splunk is developed a framework where either the company, sales engineers, partners, even potentially other competitors could build modules on top of it, right? All the app strategy, and you see it in some places, can work really well. It can also be an albatross that you have a problem getting rid of, but it also became a neat way for product solutions to kind of be tested in the marketplace.
Well, and actually, it's interesting you put that in because I didn't put that in the slides, but that particular kind of app strategy is one thing that drives additional use cases and additional usage. So the first two columns on the previous slide, the apps pulled usage. So someone's already using us for Cisco firewall logs, and they download an app that makes it easy to load in some particular IDS vendor, and suddenly we've got the IDS log.
Yeah, there's a point in time where you have to make a decision whether you're going to do that as a company, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably don't say, all right, we're going to build this thing and there's going to be an ecosystem. It's like, we're going to build this thing, try to find product market fit, find our ICP, and then we're sort of locked into the product cycle of how, hey, as a salesperson, we need more features, we need more use cases. And there's not necessarily an easy way to just grow into those use cases without re-architecting your offering.
Yeah, and it's also the attitude towards the market. I think we're drifting a little bit off. So, the other piece is that in terms of customer success and sales, knowledge of specific accounts, we're going to talk about data a little bit on a subsequent slide, but we think, the B2C mindset around behavioral data is looking at population-wide behaviors. The B2B mindset has to include an individual rep, an individual customer success person, able to see an individual account's usage and able to see trends of users within that account, because that's when you start to see, okay, well, we've sold a flat amount of this volume of usage, and these are the users that are consuming a lot of it. These are the users in the same roles who aren't. This allows us to target outreach to those users and drive more usage and increase more volume, as an example. But there's lots of those examples. It's very different to have that. The customer success row is interesting because I think that's where you get a lot of leverage, is where you don't have people who have to travel and take customers like you did last night at Salesforce out to a steak dinner. But you do have office hours, you do have contact, you do have sort of a personalized account management. Well, there's a lot more on this slide, but we will show the slides later. Let's go to the next slide. So the next two slides are kind of mirror images of each other. We'll actually put this slide in the last one. But success factors to think about is segmenting your customers. Yes, we want to go after an ideal customer profile. In my experience, the biggest successes don't have one ideal customer profile, and that's overly simplistic in understanding. Okay, well, this is what our typical, I'll give a Zuora example where I was as well. Like, this is what a B2B customer billing through Zuora that has few large invoices looks like. This is what a direct-to-consumer brand subscription customer looks like that has lots of tiny invoices, and they're going to have different journeys and different value props for expansion. The data is super, super important, and B2C data approaches do not work for B2B. Sampling doesn't work for B2B. For B2B, you need to see individual accounts behavior. And, again, it's PMs need to be able to see behaviors and hypotheses around journeys, and very few of the analytics tools that are out there are very good at dynamic cohorting based on hypotheses around interesting patterns. And customer success and sales need access to the data.
And the customers do as well. I mean, we embedded at Honeycomb, we embedded a product called Mode Analytics inside of Honeycomb, and it did some cool things, because once you often want to do like account reporting so they can see what their consumption is, and see whatever, but we've actually taken it to the same exact report that we see internally is embedded in the product. Now we can make it different for a customer, but them being able to see, that person who is on the other side of the equation, the customer success, they're trying to roll out a product, they've sponsored a thing. Sure, they have to manage license usage or consumption, but it's important to them often to see how their teams are rolling out a thing. And if you can provide them easy analytics, that you both get you're both looking at the same.
I saw a demo of a product for a company the other day where it's about saving money on purchasing, and it's integrated into the product, showing what you're actually saving, and so showing how many interactions are happening and so forth. And this was something, so that's definitely one of the things with data. So docs, you do not have self-service if you don't have docs where the words are absolutely consistent between the interface, between the pricing and the documentation. There isn't a firm lexicon. These things aren't all linked up. The docs system, is super important. Too many people hire docs people just based on, writing a cool how-to. It's a much more systematic thing, and you do not have self-service without solid docs. We talked about pricing. One of the things on pricing is you have to have rigor on pricing. You can't have let's make a deal pricing with your wonderful salespeople. They can't make up pricing on the fly, because then you don't have a basis of consistent customer pricing to design expansion around. If everybody has something different, you can't productize expansion. The CRM system, I don't see people putting enough energy into matching the schema in their CRM to the way that they plan their product and plan their go-to-market in terms of how they view segmentation, how they view deployment. So if you don't know that, these are the competitive products that were displaced, these are the products that are integrated that are potentially competitive, these are the products that are data sources. If you don't know all those things about your customers in your CRM, and you can't correlate that with the data of their usage, you can't really find opportunities for expansion.
Yeah, and you have to rely on people like me to put in accurate data on there, and it's never perfect.
Yes, but at least if you give people like you a framework that makes it easy to point and click and do the right thing.
We're a very multitasking group, and we're often super focused on the interaction, especially either in a eval or in a sales call, and it becomes it becomes secondary. Although, like at Honeycomb, we use a bunch of interesting AI stuff to help the data augmentation, pulling info from calls and other things like that make it easier. Because you want your salespeople selling and not being total data entry people, but on the other hand, you need the data to make better decisions.
Well, and that's where customer success comes in too. So, okay, another discussion. The other part is, so I'll put a plug in here for Tahi Nam's and Bob Tinker's book, Survival to Thrival. There's 2 books in the series. It's, it's the Bible of how to build B2B businesses. And Tahi is one of the partners here. And it's kind of a Bible for Storm. And it's a lot about, how do you find that true product market fit? What people forget is that, especially if your expansion strategy is adding new features or, God forbid, new products, you have to go through the same process of finding product market fit. And one of the struggles is often you have a company that's off to the races and growing with the core product and has forgotten how to do 1.0 and has forgotten that, it's a learning process. You're back to founder sales. If it's a larger, if you're large enough to introduce a new product, maybe it's product manager sales, but, there's a whole other process of finding that product market fit again. Then incentives and alignment. Your second bullet was yours, so the PS point.
Yeah, I mean, I think also sales, especially in early stage companies, sales and customer success become one unit. So, if you get a mature company like Datadog, close a deal, that deal it goes to the customer success team, but the customer success team at Datadog has salespeople there. They're almost like renewal reps. Whereas in a smaller company, or I'll just talk from my experience, like we have customer success managers and engineers at Honeycomb, and the AE is also responsible for the expansion, which means that it is in your best interest, if you are running a company or hiring people like myself, to have that person be good at continuing and growing the relationship beyond just the 4 people they met with, right? Taking the thing all the way through and making sure that customers are getting what they need, they're getting the services they need so they can expand, and ultimately you're making an impact.
Yeah. And I'll just say that, one of the things I've seen in some of the companies where I've come in as a fix-it CPO, and again, we shall leave the blameless, the blameworthy unnamed. I've seen a lot of situations where the incentives have been for reps to close the biggest TCV multi-year deals up front, and they basically, bargained away because of the bogus incentive programs. They bargained away future upsell, and the customer is going to value your product less today than in 3 years because you're going to make your product better. So you don't want to be selling 3 years out, and you don't want a sales incentive plan that encourages you to pre-bill the 3 years out in in an artificial way when you're like at 1.0, 2.0 version product.
It's probably natural for companies to want to do that, just because then they've got their guaranteed revenue stream for the next N number of years, and that also probably, I don't get to raise funds ever, but it probably helps in the model. Like, look, we're a growing business.
I'm going to disagree with you there.
Right? I'm
going to disagree with you there because I think it actually,
I don't think it's the best idea to start deal 1 as a multi-year deal.
Yeah.
But
yeah, but I've walked into a lot of multi-year deals and basically, existing customers that are never expandable, and you've taken it all off the table for way too little money up front. Fair. Not you personally, but one. I've never seen that with you. Okay. So, so then I think, the people, I'll make a plug for Wilde here, which is, he's been successful places that classic sales reps have not been successful because you've got the domain knowledge for what you sell, and it really takes that, especially if your expansion is new products. It's got to be people who, who are that consultative salesperson that you are.
Well, you're a pro. You should know a lot about your domain. I think I often will see, sales is a skill, product is a skill, engineering is a skill, but that skill gets honed if you learn a lot about the domain at which you're selling it. You can, go from selling plumbing to cars to whatever. Yes, selling is selling. But you're probably going to be better at it if you just stick to a domain and go deep in it. In the same way, if you're coming out of college and you're working at Deloitte and they tell you, hey, you're going to go work with car companies and you're going to help them make their production lines better. You know what you should do? Learn everything you can about what it's like in a factory. Once you do that, your customer, then you can empathize with your customer's challenges better, and they trust you. And also you learn things that you didn't know, and it becomes a career at that point in time.
Yeah, indeed. Next slide. I think we've got two more, but I blast through it. So Tahi asked me to dive in on, data insights because there's sort of it's sort of like, it's eating our own tail here. We've both spent a lot of time on data and logging, but they're also pretty critical for our customers in terms of expansion strategies. And I'm not going to read this whole slide, but I'm going to say that the point of this is that for B2B analytics, you need to have behavioral analytics products that are capable of understanding the behaviors at an account level, at a team level, at a user level, and how the propagation of your product, especially if you're doing an expansion strategy of new team and an existing customer, or more volume selling on users, or more volume if you're selling on new use cases, you have to be able to see the patterns of what series of behaviors with a given user causes them to do a behavior that brings another user on board. What series of behaviors in a given team causes them to do a behavior that brings another team on board that causes them to add volume of whatever your metric is. And you have to be able to cut all of that by the dimensions that comes from the context of your other business systems, particularly your CRM, but also your billing systems, your campaign management, your support. And I put some of that at the bottom of this. And when you think about, B2C analytics don't see the world the way it's mapped out on the left. They just don't. And some of these products have tried to graft it on, but it doesn't work. And unfortunately, for the most part, you're stuck using, tools like Looker that are more generic and like customizing it, because there's really not a lot out of the box that does it right in terms of what's on the left. Metrics that matter. At Storm, we're spending some time focusing on a new metric called net usage retention, which is different than net revenue retention. So if your usage metric that you charge on, that you maybe have fixed plans that are subscription that include a certain amount, what's the retention of how many queries per day or how many invoices you send or whatever? Like, what is the net usage retention of that? Is that going up an account or down an account? And that may be slightly divorced from the revenue because you may be pre-selling volume or it may be consumption based, but NUR is more of an indication that you don't have shelfware. And then your value metrics volume may be different than what you bill on. So if I go back to a Splunk or a Honeycomb, query example, these products charge basically on volume of data coming in various ways. But where users get value is that they're actually running queries, they're looking at Bubble Up and Honeycomb, they're looking at screens that offer value. And there's an intentional choice not to charge on that because you don't want to disincentivize getting that value, but you want to see the customers are actually getting that value. So your charge metric and your value metric will often ideally be different.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because like you're going to either create an incentive or a disincentive based on however license model you have, right? Mm-hmm. I kind of generally would recommend that most people choose things that are indexed to something that will grow. So if you look at how user licensing models are, I think what a lot of people forget is there are a whole bunch of $15 or $20 a month licenses on the top of every employee's head, whether it's your HR system, your CR system, GitHub, all of that. So like you come in as a sales rep and you want to charge $25 a month or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Then now what you don't realize is the economics of that are hitting the CFO is now this is another pile of licenses on top of a human head. And sometimes, and I've seen this, people do this with New Relic, where they'll buy one user license, and they'll move it around. If you can index it to something that grows better than employees, right?
Well, it's better, right? That's another interesting thing about that, which is, that you want virality, you want every employee in a company using your product ideally in whatever way. I hate user pricing for exactly all those reasons. Right. And sometimes it makes sense, but a priori, I'm always looking for something else. And, and then you've got like the whole, like, well, do I have average users? I have contractors. I only want, like CRM systems. I don't want product to have access to CRMs. I don't want to charge for those heads.
CRM's the same way, right?
It's just bad. But I will say there's other metrics that are, that are really bad. Like in our space of data, I've been at companies where people want to charge based on the total volume of data that you are keeping. And then what happens is there's underlying growth in the business from your customers, and the CFOs are just like, well, can you just keep less history? And so you get no expansion.
Yeah, you have to optimize for something, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully you can find a model that'll stick.
But just some other metrics to think about is, this does come from consumer, but you do care about like DAUs, MAUs per account. Like, is that going up? Especially if you're not charging per user, but you want to see that go up because you want to see that you're becoming stickier and more embedded in the company and more people in the company are using it. Like, Scuba, an internal tool at Facebook that spawned a lot of Honeycomb, a lot of other places I've been, in terms of inspiration and technology. It was used by 50% of Facebook employees in the early 2010s. And that includes every, ad rep is a data analytics product. Like that is sticky. You want to see that with commercial products we're selling into companies.
I think commercial products, what you also have to do is identify the dark matter. So like you can do a deal and you've got a bunch of users and the graph is going up and to the right as far as MAU, but how many people do you not, what's the rest of the employee base that you could potentially have? Because things might seem great, but what you don't know, there's another vendor in there that has 250 users and you've got 19. And if you can figure out what the balance of like the dark matter outside the stars, then you can see what the opportunity is to grow in that matter.
Absolutely. Then similarly, sort of sessions per user per day, just like how frequently are you being used? And then a really important thing is under consumed committed volume. I do prefer tiered pre-commit volumes, but you don't want to oversell them because then you come up on renewal and people are like, it's going to be a downsell. So you got to be careful. And again, that comes down to some sales incentives. But as a team across product sales and success, you should be watching like a hawk. These accounts, we sold them, 100 widgets per month and the actual current consumption is 20, that's a red flag on renewal.
Right.
Anyway, so and then behaviors that matter, like I think just looking, and this goes to the graphic on the, on the left of what are the patterns, like how do you cohort your users, your teams, your accounts, and understand, the consumer example that's classic is the Facebook, 7 friends in whatever number of days. What is your B2B equivalent that is the indicator of behavior that you have a new champion you never talked to that is developing and is bringing on other teams and other users? Like, what are those behaviors? And you have to be able to do sort of what if analysis, which again, is hard to do.
Well, and you like to your metrics that matter, like to find those, you're talking about like us, sure, we'll price on volume, but then there's key features. And if there is one key metric where you think this is the real valuable thing about our product, how are you getting them there? Or when is that new champion? Oh, someone discovered this thing in the product. Like, oh, that must mean it's working and I found another potential.
Exactly. And then how do you drive more people that feature that causes that behavior? So last slide now, I think. And I know we're going over on slides, but I think we kind of multiplexing our discussion with our slides. So it's okay. We'll go to Q&A after this. Sound good?
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay. So pitfalls. Productitis is one of my Christina neologisms, but I hate large product portfolios, especially in small companies. Again, to the point with B2B SaaS, sometimes you have to charge for different modules because it drives different usage, but too many small companies have too many products and too many options, and it's a support maintenance nightmare. Customers feel nickel and dimed. I won't walk through all of these because I think they're kind of the inverse of 2 slides ago. But these are some of the things I think you really need to watch, watch for, like the let's make a deal, like less savvy reps than Michael have have browbeaten their companies into allowing them to sell whatever to whomever and turn whatever knobs, and you don't actually have product. You have a whole bunch of bespoke services, and then you have no basis. So these are some of the things to, to think about. I think, again, we covered a lot of these on the slide before last, so we probably should move to discussion and Q&A. We've got a few questions coming in. So just looking at these questions, Michael, do you want to take some of these sales perspective questions that someone put in?
Sure. There's a question like, what does sales need or want from other departments to succeed and expand? Customer success or product or marketing? Obviously, the base thing is like, and there's another question like this. You have to have a comp plan that incentivizes people to do work, right? But let's say you've sorted that out. I think alignment is really key, that the other departments, let's say it's marketing or engineering or product, depending on how you separate them out, really know what's going on. The farther you get away from the sales process into the factory that's building the thing, or the factory that's doing long-term marketing, the less you generally might know. So customer success, those folks, if you can find people that are reasonably good business people, not, that like if they had to sub in and sell for me, that would be great. A lot of customer success people are ex-sales engineers. Some of them are ex-professional services people. Some of them like to be in the weeds. But if you can find, and I've got a couple of great folks at Honeycomb that are awesome customer success managers that are like actively looking at how we take and expand that. Also, the salesperson should stay with the account the whole time if you can. Be a useful person. And then if your marketing team, if your product team and your marketing team can be somewhat aligned with you so that they're beginning to understand and anticipate and prioritize things that existing, especially large customers, might have. And marketing looking at the opportunities like, hey, if this is successful in 8 months, we should be able to have a case study or whatever. Like, it has to be fairly aligned, but that's often not natural in startup companies.
Yeah. I'm going to take the question of what does product want from other departments to succeed and expands. Well, again, a lot of it comes down to where are you on the matrix that we presented on sort of the first slide, like, what kind of expands are we talking about? Is your model product-led or sales-led? But I would say that it's almost the inverse of what you just said. The first thing is you do need that alignment. You need the company to not have product having one idea of how expands happen and sales having another idea. And then at a more tactical level, and this goes to another question we got from somebody else, but at a more tactical level, you need to have the understanding that it's an engineering priority and a design team priority to design the best, most self-service flow, even if it's sales-led, but the best, most sort of self-service flow and the features that, in the product tell customers, hey, you're approaching this, this usage limit, that you are designing how your, license limits work in a way that's very customer friendly. That's also, sending the right notifications to customer success, the right notifications to sales. Like, that nuance needs as much engineering effort as making your core functionality better. And you need to have the support across the organization. I would say also, like from sales in particular, when I'm sitting around an executive team table and I'm getting hammered as a head of product by a head of sales that we're not delivering, against, one-off customer requests or deal specific requests, and that work is competing with the work to make the PLG motion work and make it easier for everybody, but that takes more lead time to have impact. Like, understanding the priority of making the product upsell itself, like that's the kind of support, and that nuance of looking at the whole business is really important.
Yeah, I liked your point earlier about like the idea of like trialing new features and then rolling them back. I think it's obviously sales-led growth is that you're not doing $1 million deals through PLG usually, right? But you're growing to that point. And aside from the fact that like at the larger size deal, there is an MSA and there's legal and risk and all this other stuff that is not happening at PLG. But what I see different models that are either really great or not so great that don't understand the flow of how you acquire a customer, how you introduce features. You put up these gates between freemium and whatever that are sometimes impassable for customers. And then of course, I haven't seen anybody really do this extremely well other than Datadog is, allow for try a new thing. Because what we want to do in enterprise sales, we want to take and wrap a process around it so that unless you commit to some sort of big business engagement, you're not going to be able to do the trial version of the enterprise stuff. And half of this, enterprise level B2B stuff requires either some transformations or some level of commitment. So how do you even experiment with it? I think if you design that with in mind, there's just a blurring between PLG and sales-led growth. Yeah. If you do it right, but
I'll take the extreme negative example, and again, show nameless, a company that I privately consulted with, and it's not on my background, so I won't name them, but they were approaching $100 million in revenue, ARR, but they, started to see a lot of competition, and they had 4 editions of their product, 3 on-prem, 1 cloud, and the only way to go to a new edition or trial a new edition was to completely uninstall and reinstall. That's fine when they had no competition. Not so fine later. So again, it like that priority on those kinds of features. Why don't we take we got a few other questions coming in here. So Jamie said, I love the analytics dashboard approach. How have you found success building internal dev resources to prioritize to build, considering the competing interests on building core product? Well, I kind of addressed that, but on analytics specifically, ideally you find an analytics platform, whether it's Mode or something else, that it's as self-service as possible for product people, for customer success people, for sales people to go in, and the only real engineering effort is to get the data pipelines, whether it's Segment or whatever, the data pipelines to go into the product, then the data's there and it's ad hoc queryable. I'm not satisfied with Mode, with Amplitude. I'm not satisfied with their abilities, but it's still better than nothing. So to make it as self-service as possible. And then I think, one of the critical hires when you do get somewhere between, 50 and 100 people, it's worth investing in a real good business analyst that works with all the teams and insulating that, good data analysts and insulating that from the competition with core engineering.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like how some of this gets started. So you start your company, you ship your product, and you show some metric, whether it's, in our case, like events per month or whatever the metric you're being charged on, so the customer can see that. Then product and customer success and support will start asking for customers are needing to see this, they're needing to see this, and they want a metric on this and how many data sets you're using or whatever. And I really like the approach that we took. So like specifically to answer Jamie's question is try to find, like when you're doing dashboardy stuff to report product analytics, potentially to your customers, because I think it's really good to put it to your customers, but also internally, try to get to a point where you can either embed another tool or use a framework. My friend Tyler Wells runs a company called Propel Data, and they make a really awesome tool for developers to easily build the componentry to do reporting in there. At Honeycomb, we use Mode, and what's cool about that, we have Mode as our analytics system, but we can flag on a different report for any customer. So yesterday, another customer said, hey, I want to see this report with a couple other things added. My customer success team, who's good at data, is sitting there cranking out a new report, changing a feature flag in Launch Darkly, which is our feature flag system, and boom, now let's say Stripe has a different report than everyone else. It makes it faster to give the customer the analytics, just like it is.
But I think net, your customer success team is good at data, your PM team is good at data.
Yeah.
And I think we are giving too much of a pass, and there's too much of a data butler thing going on where it shouldn't be core engineering that has to do all this for everybody else. If you are not good at data, probably go do whatever education or comfort level to go get good at data. If you are going to do anything from a product success or sales job in a modern B2B SaaS company.
Yeah, if you're selling cars, you're not good at making brakes, just find somebody who does it well.
Okay, well, there's another question that's a good one. I won't name just for confidentiality, but someone says they're in a new market, AI observability, which means most of our buyers are buying our category for the first time. We are top-down SLG. Any additional go-to-market sales strategies you recommend? Well, I'm just going to say one, which is I see a lot of companies at this early stage that are in something where they have to use consultative salespeople to, I see those companies often do the let's make a deal pricing, versus saying that even in that situation, and I do a lot of pricing consulting with companies and enterprise pricing consulting, even in that situation, product still owns pricing. You still need to have the standard product with standard pricing. You're going to iterate based on what you learn, but it needs to be as controlled iteration over pricing and packaging as you have over the design of a feature.
Mm-hmm.
More so even. So I think that's one thing for the person who asked that question, I would recommend. So you need to have a real price list with real fixed SKUs. If you have usage-based pricing, your usage metric is an SKU. If you have tiered pricing, your tiers are SKUs. There aren't knobs per customer. If you need to turn another knob, you have another package. And that kind of discipline is I think super important. If your goal, the person who asked this question, is to have customers buying for the first time, and you're doing this consultative sales, but you're building a base of customers where you have future expansion opportunity.
Yeah, you also have to nail the external messaging. Like, you do a lot of things focused on digital marketing, and you're buying AdWords, and you're getting people to just click to your website. And then what I often see in the marketplace is like marketing people using the same basic terms so they can optimize for SEO, and you end up looking like everybody else. You have 15 to 30 seconds on a website to put a compelling message together that says, I want to read more. And you know what ultimately ends up happening is the blogs of your company's blogs have the best messaging and the best descriptions of what you do. And people are never going to make it there. So like the challenge that I see, half of it is, sure, you got to make your product easy to trial. You should have domain experts, depending on the market that you're in, but your messaging needs to keep people on the site so that they're staying there. Now, never mind like all this AI stuff that is now going to be reading your web pages for you, and it's going to change SEO. But I think getting people to stick around to listen to your message is top importance, even if you're a commodity or a innovative product.
Okay, I can't wait to answer the next question.
Oh boy.
What's coming. What's coming with this one. What is your advice and recommendation for handling price uplifts upon renewal? I have a short answer. Don't do them. Design your pricing so that you have a metric that is going to grow, so that the way you get higher dollars on renewal is you sell more. Software products, digital products should get more valuable over time.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the concern that when you have a new product, you feel this need to have a low price because you haven't proven your value yet. Do that by selling less and showing value with less and picking a metric. And I will go back to Splunk example. Like Splunk launched as an on-prem product with 500 megabytes per day costing $2,500 per year. That same pricing model, over time, we gradually reduced the price per gigabyte, and that same pricing model supported a deal with a customer who shall go nameless that was $100 million for 3 years. Because what we did was we picked a metric where 500 gigabytes a day seemed like a hell of a lot of data in 2006. But Now we're talking about petabytes per day for the largest customers. And so we had confidence that that was the direction of that volume and that was the metric to hit.
Right.
And so we reduced price over time. So anyway, that's why I can't wait to answer. And I'm sorry to the person who asked that question to be so blunt.
Yeah, sometimes CFOs will put in uplift inside the MSA.
Yeah.
Like Salesforce does this for, it's like, hey, it's 7% a year, your prices can go up. That's a model that can work.
But they've got per user pricing. So again,
Right.
with per user pricing, you kind of get stuck with that, but it's still unfortunate.
Yeah.
And as much as I don't like having productitis and additional products, if you can't get the underlying metric to grow, I'd still rather have you sell additional modules than just uplift the price on renewal for the same product.
Yeah, it's never a fun situation to be in, especially if you've raised your price. Like, when you change sometimes you change your model, sometimes you raise your prices, and you've got customers on old pricing.
Yeah.
And never mind just wanting to get a little bit more money from them. It's not an awesome place to be.
I've been through model changes before, and they are painful. And that's another one that comes back to don't do let's make a deal pricing. If you're doing a model change, at least you hope your existing 500 customers are all in the same model. You're taking them to the new model so you can have the same messaging that is in the product. You can't have in-product messaging about pricing model changes if the product has different pricing models as a starting point.
Right.
You gotta have a clean starting point. Here's another question from an anonymous attendee. How to identify PQL, PQA contacts to reach your customers directly, combining PLG and SLG, in-house self-made things, or something like clay.com, HubSpot, Zendesk via email. And my answer on that is that this is where it comes down to your behavioral systems integrating with your CRM and integrating with your other data systems. So, sometimes you're going to see it based on behavior. Sometimes you're going to see it based on the role that's captured in the CRM. If you can have an event-driven architecture where the usage events that are happening in the system are enriched by what you know about the role from the CRM. And I don't know, clay.com, maybe it does this, but I have never done this well without it being part of the feature spec in the product itself that my company's engineers have to work on and say, and be somewhat smart about. And it can be pretty trivial. It can be like, okay, if somebody in the CRM system that is noted in the CRM system as being a I don't know, success engineer, invites a new user that is also a success engineer, and they do X, Y, and Z, then show this message, that kind of thing. I don't know if you have better answers on that.
No, I think also, like, one of the things we don't do, like when a lead comes in, we'll have like a lead source and we'll track kind of like how they matured to that point. What doesn't happen often is how did a new user get in? So you have an existing deal. How did that brand new user, like we can see, like at Honeycomb, we can see they did a product sign up, which means they maybe got invited, but like trying to attribute them to whatever influence happened would be something I would love to be able to do.
But this person goes on to say we're reaching 2 million plus MAUs and thousands of PQLs, leaders, VPs, how to connect them instead of regular people who can't affect deal. I don't think there's a lot of harm in having, having a message go too wide. But again, if you have an event-driven system and you are tracking your events and you're enriching them with the metadata of what that user identity is in your CRM system, then you have the opportunity to have tailored messages.
I think we probably got time for like one more question.
I think we have one more here. Perfect. Yeah. So
this is a good one. Like Dan asks, like, considering what Michael said about how important it is to have the salesperson embedded in the customer success process to ensure expansion and renewal, when does it make sense to layer in a dedicated customer success team? Say a simple SaaS software sale, but more sophisticated enterprise network security requires integration of core infrastructure. Like we We brought on customer success pretty early at Honeycomb. I've been here for almost 6 years, been a salesperson for almost 5. And you know what a salesperson can't do is, or shouldn't do, I mean, you're starting early, so you probably have a salesperson, you've got a sales engineer or solution architect. Sure, when you're completely bootstrapped, you're having everybody under the sun trying to help enable this person. So I think even early at Honeycomb, we would have some of our founding engineers enable them. But real quickly, it's a good idea to hire one or more customer success people, maybe not a person from VMware that's led 10,000 people, but to have them there looking after that part of the business, running the analytics, finding an adoption path and trying to help customers there. Where I really believe it's important for salespeople to continue the relationship. So if you are, I'm a pretty technical sales guy, but it really doesn't matter. If you are there for every customer success meeting, I don't care if you have to wake up like every 2 weeks. I have a customer in Amsterdam, booking.com. Every 2 weeks for the past 3 years, I've been up at 5 or 6 a.m. participating in customer success. Why? Then I'm not the salesperson that comes around at the end of every year going, hey, I'm here for the renewal. If you're there with them, you end up learning their business, knowing their challenges, not just sitting there yelling at products saying, why aren't you building what my customer success is doing while I'm trying to go out and close the rest of the world? Like, be a business partner, but you can't, I think you should bring on customer success early so that you actually have a partnership and a team for that customer. That's just my experience. If I had a wave of magic wand, I would do it again, probably the same way.
So I think we're at time. I really appreciate all of the, all of the questions that everybody provided. I know that we'll send out links to the recording to everybody who was on, as well as links to the materials. Sam, do you have any other closing comments?
Just, yeah, thank you so much for everybody for joining us. And thank you so much to Michael and Christina and Arun. Thank you as well. And yeah, I know Christina mentioned this, but we will send out the recording, and also we can email out the deck as well to you guys who attended. So appreciate everybody's time.
Good job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.